All right, welcome in everyone to our deep dive today. And we're going to be taking a look at a film noir from 1953 called Pickup on South Street.
Yeah.
Now, this one is interesting because it's not just your typical crime thriller. We've got a bunch of different film reviews and analyses, and we're really going to try to dig into some of the meat of it here. It gets into stuff like Cold War anxieties, the grittier side of life, and those characters who, really kind of blur the lines between right and wrong.
Yeah.
What do you think is so captivating about this film?
Well, I think that the director, Samuel Fuller, takes something so seemingly simple. Like a pickpocket, stealing a piece of microfilm, and really turning it into just this tense exploration of how societal pressures can really shape individual morality.
Yeah.
And makes you really think, what would you do in a similar situation?
Exactly. And speaking of pickpocketing, our main character, Skip McCoy, is a pickpocket.
Yes, he is.
It's not your typical hero.
No, not at all. And, Fuller was really well known for his morally ambiguous characters. Those people kind of existing in the fringes of society. And Skip really embodies that. Instead of like clear-cut heroes and villains, he gives us these characters who are forced to make these really tough choices.
Yeah.
It really reflects the complexities of the world that they inhabit.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it seems like Richard Widmark's performance as Skip is just amazing. All the reviews mention that he's really able to portray that cynical character with these hidden depths. He makes him captivating even though he is flawed. How does he do that?
Well, Widmark's portrayal of Skip is masterful, honestly.
Yeah.
He combines toughness and resourcefulness with these subtle hints of vulnerability, suggesting a conscience simmering beneath the surface. It makes you question, is he truly a bad guy or just a product of his circumstances? And it's a question that kind of lingers throughout the entire film. Yeah,
the film doesn't sugarcoat the reality of 1950s New York at all. All the reviews talk about this world of shadows. In tight spaces, close-ups, dimly lit settings.
Claustrophobic framing, it sounds. Pretty intense.
It's intense. The visual style is really key here. Fuller uses all those techniques to just heighten the sense of paranoia and distrust that was just permeating the Cold War era. He's not just telling a story. He's pulling you into this world where danger's lurking around every corner and nobody can be trusted. You can think of it like the tight framing and the shadows kind of mirror the character's limited choices and just that constant threat of surveillance.
That's interesting how he uses the visuals to create that tension. All the reviews also talk about that there's very minimal exposition. The visuals and the actions are really driving the narrative here.
Yeah.
What do you think? Why do you think he went with that approach?
Well, I think that minimalist approach keeps the pacing really tight. And forces you to actively engage with the story. You're not just passively watching. You're deciphering clues.
Reading between the lines and forming your own judgments about the characters and their motives.
It's like a puzzle that you have to solve alongside the character.
Exactly.
So there's one character I'm really curious about. And that's Mo, the informant, played by Thelma Ritter. She seems to be a lot more than just a side character.
Mo is absolutely crucial to the film's emotional core. She represents the struggles of the underclass. The people forced to make compromises just to survive in a system that's stacked against them. Her fate in the film is particularly poignant, highlighting the human cost of these larger conflicts and societal inequalities.
So Fuller is using her character to challenge us to think about the individuals who are often overlooked in these narratives of espionage and intrigue.
Exactly. He's showing us the ripple effects of these high-stakes games and how they impact the lives of ordinary people caught in the crossfire. It begs the question, who pays the price for these ideological battles?
And then, of course, there's the theme of patriotism, which is especially interesting given the Cold War backdrop. You would kind of expect a lot more flag-waving. But it sounds like Fuller handled it a bit differently.
Fuller was a master of subtlety. He explores patriotism through the character's actions and choices, rather than through grand speeches or obvious symbolism. For instance, Skip's ambivalence towards authority and Candy's reluctant involvement with spies reflect a society grappling with the complexities of loyalty in a time of fear and suspicion. It's a much more nuanced and realistic portrayal of patriotism, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's not about blind allegiance.
Yeah.
It's about the individuals wrestling with their sense of right and wrong in this larger political landscape.
Exactly.
So we've got this morally ambiguous hero, a world of shadows and secrets, and a deep dive into the choices people make when they're really pushed to the edge. This feels less like your typical heist film and more like a philosophical thriller wrapped in film noir.
You hit the nail on the head. Pickup on South Street isn't just about catching bad guys. It's about the gray areas of human nature, the forces that shape our decisions, and the personal cost of ideological conflicts.
And he uses that visual language of film noir to bring those themes to life.
Yeah.
You're talking about the framing and the shadows, but what are the camera movements and the way that the actors are positioned in scenes?
That's where Fuller's directorial brilliance shines. Take, for example, the scene where Skip lifts the microfilm from Candy's purse.
Okay.
It's a masterclass in building suspense. He utilizes this tight close-up on Skip's hand as it dips into Candy's bag, intercut with shots of her oblivious face, and the camera lingers on the stolen object, a symbol of both power and vulnerability in this world of secrets.
You can just feel the tension radiating off the screen. You're right there with Skip, experiencing the thrill and danger of the theft.
Exactly, and Fuller repeats that technique throughout the film, using those close-ups and the strategic camera movements to heighten that sense of claustrophobia and paranoia. Consider the way he often positions characters in doorways or hallways, creating that sense of being trapped, both physically and metaphorically.
That's an interesting observation. It's like the physical space reflects their limited choices.
Exactly.
And the constant feeling of being watched. And he does it without relying on this heavy-handed dialogue or exposition. He trusts the visuals and the actors to convey those complexities of the story.
That trust in his audience is what makes Fuller's films so engaging. He doesn't spoon-feed us the answers. He invites us to participate in the unraveling of the narrative.
He's like a master puppeteer, skillfully manipulating the strings of suspense and intrigue, and drawing us deeper into the world of Pickup on South Street. But before we get too lost in the suspense here, let's delve a little deeper into these characters and their motivations. We've talked a lot about Skip and Mo, but what about Candy? The reviews suggest that she's more than just your typical femme fatale.
You're right. Candy is far more complex than that. She's caught in this dangerous web of deceit, forced to make difficult choices to survive. Jean Peters' performance is crucial here.
Okay.
She portrays Candy with this mix of vulnerability and cunning, hinting at a hidden strength that will eventually emerge.
So she's not just a pawn in this game of espionage.
Not at all. Candy has her own motivations, her own sense of survival. She's not simply a love interest or a damsel in distress.
It's a refreshing take. On that classic noir trope. It seems like Fuller's deliberately challenging those stereotypes and giving his female characters more agency and depth.
He absolutely is. And by doing so, he creates characters that are multidimensional, unpredictable, and ultimately far more interesting than those found in more conventional films of the era. But we'll delve deeper into those dynamics and explore their individual struggles in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds intriguing. We'll be back soon with part 2 of our deep dive into Pickup on South Street. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our exploration of Pickup on South Street. Before we got deeper into the characters, we were examining how Fuller masterfully utilizes these visual techniques, like the close-ups and the strategic camera placement, to amplify the film's atmosphere of claustrophobia and paranoia. It's incredible how he creates such a palpable sense of unease through purely visual means.
You're absolutely right. Those techniques really get under your skin.
Yeah.
But now let's shift our focus back to the characters, especially Candy.
Okay.
You mentioned that she's not your typical femme fatale.
Yeah.
That she has those hidden depths and agency.
Candy is trapped in this dangerous game, forced to make these difficult choices just to survive. And what's fascinating is how Fuller visually represents that entrapment. Consider the scene where she's being interrogated in her dimly lit apartment.
Okay.
The shadows engulf her, obscuring her face and reflecting her inner turmoil. It's like she's both physically and psychologically imprisoned.
That imagery is so powerful.
It is.
You can practically feel the walls closing in on her.
Precisely. And then there's the scene where she's followed through the bustling crowds of Times Square.
Okay.
Fuller uses a handheld camera to capture the chaos and disorientation, mirroring Candy's feeling of being hunted and lost. in this world that offers her little protection.
So even in a crowded public space,
yeah,
she can't escape that feeling of being watched.
Right.
Of being trapped in this web of intrigue.
Exactly. And her relationship with Skip adds another layer of complexity to her character. Their initial interaction is purely transactional, but as the film progresses, we see these hints of genuine connection and even empathy emerge.
It's a testament to Fuller's skill as a storyteller, that he can create such nuanced relationships amidst this gritty, suspenseful narrative. He doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of human nature, but he also allows for those moments of tenderness and connection to shine through.
Absolutely. And those moments are often expressed visually through subtle gestures and glances. Think of the scene where Skip bandages Candy's hand after a violent encounter. The camera lingers on their hands touching, a moment of vulnerability amidst the harsh reality of their situation. It speaks volumes about their unspoken connection, wouldn't you say?
It's a powerful example of how Fuller uses visual storytelling to convey emotions that go beyond words. It's like he's inviting us to read between the lines, to understand those complexities of their relationship without explicitly stating them.
Precisely. He trusts his audience to piece together the puzzle, to make their own interpretations of these characters and their motivations.
Speaking of motivations, what about Mo? What drives her to become an informant in this dangerous world?
Mo embodies the theme of survival in its most raw and heart-waking form. She's a product of her environment, hardened by years of hardship, and forced to make compromises just to scrape by. Her decision to become an informant, while morally ambiguous, is ultimately a desperate attempt to navigate a system that offers her little choice.
It's a stark reminder of the harsh realities facing the underclass in 1950s New York.
Exactly. And Fuller doesn't shy away from depicting those realities. He shows us the squalor of Mo's apartment, the weariness etched on her face, the toll that years of poverty and betrayal have taken on her spirit.
But despite that weariness, there's also a resilience to Mo, a fierce determination to keep going, even when the odds are stacked against her.
Absolutely. And that resilience is reflected in her interactions with Skip. Despite their differences, they share a certain understanding, a recognition of the struggles they both face.
That's like they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Both survivors, both operating on the fringes of society, each trying to find their own way to navigate a world that often seems indifferent to their plight.
That's a great way to put it. They represent different facets of the human condition, the pragmatist, the idealist, the cynic, the dreamer. But they're all united by their shared humanity, their desire to find meaning and connection in a world that can feel isolating and unforgiving.
And it's through these characters, with all their flaws and complexities, that Fuller explores those larger themes of the film. Moral ambiguity, individual freedom versus national security, and the struggle for survival in a world defined by Cold War anxieties.
Precisely. He uses these individuals and their personal journeys to reflect the larger societal forces at play. It's like he's saying these are not just fictional characters, they represent us, our struggles, our choices, our capacity for both good and evil.
And by focusing on those individual stories, Fuller avoids preaching or grandstanding. He just presents us with a slice of life, albeit a rather intense and suspenseful one, and invites us to draw our own conclusions.
That's the mark of a truly great storyteller. He doesn't tell us what to think. He shows us, trusting us to engage with the material and wrestle with the implications.
Speaking of wrestling with implications, our notes mentioned that Pickup on South Street faced some criticism upon its release.
It did.
What was the nature of that criticism, especially given its Cold War context?
Well, some critics found Fuller's portrayal of patriotism, or lack thereof, to be controversial. Remember, this was the McCarthy era, a time when questioning authority or expressing anything less than unwavering allegiance to the American ideal could be dangerous.
So Fuller's focus on these morally ambiguous characters, particularly those who operate outside the law, might have ruffled some feathers.
Absolutely. Some viewers probably expected a more clear-cut good versus evil narrative with heroic Americans triumphing over the communist threat. But Fuller wasn't interested in simplistic portrayals.
So he wanted to show the nuances.
Yeah.
The gray areas of human behavior.
Exactly.
Even when it came to patriotism.
Precisely. His characters, even those who ultimately side with the American government, are driven by personal motivations, often rooted in survival or self-preservation, rather than blind ideology.
It's a more realistic and perhaps more unsettling portrayal of human behavior. It kind of suggests that even in times of national crisis, individual choices are often driven by complex and sometimes selfish motivations.
Exactly. And that complexity, that refusal to shy away from the darker aspects of human nature, is what makes Pickup on South Street such a powerful and enduring film.
It's a film that challenges us to think critically about our own values and beliefs, even when those beliefs are deeply ingrained in our cultural fabric.
Absolutely. And that challenge, that invitation to question and reconsider our assumptions, is part of what makes Pickup on South Street so relevant even today.
It's a film that transcends its time and speaks to something fundamental about the human condition, our capacity for both good and evil, our struggle to survive in this complex world, and the choices we make when confronted with moral dilemmas.
You've captured it perfectly. It's a film that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the systems we inhabit. But it also offers a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of society, human connection and resilience can prevail.
It's a powerful message, and one that resonates deeply in our current times. But before we delve further into the film's lasting impact and its relevance today, let's take a moment to appreciate Fuller's remarkable skill as a filmmaker.
Absolutely. His mastery of visual storytelling, his ability to create suspense and atmosphere, and his gift for crafting compelling and complex characters are truly exceptional.
Well said. And to fully understand the impact of Pickup on South Street, we need to delve into its ending, a culmination of all the tension and thematic exploration we've been discussing.
Indeed. The ending is a masterpiece of ambiguity and emotional resonance, perfectly encapsulating the film's central themes and leaving audiences with a profound sense of contemplation. But we'll save that discussion for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll unpack the film's legacy and its lasting impact on cinema.
Stay tuned as we delve into the final act of Pickup on South Street and explore its enduring influence on filmmakers and audiences alike. Welcome back to our deep dive into Pickup on South Street. We've been exploring the film's intricate characters,
its shadowy visual style, and its unflinching portrayal of Cold War anxieties.
Now we're finally ready to unpack the film's ending, a culmination of all the tension and thematic exploration we've been discussing.
You're right. The ending of Pickup on South Street is a masterclass in ambiguity and emotional resonance. It perfectly encapsulates the film's central themes and leaves audiences with so much to ponder. It's not a neat Hollywood ending where all the loose ends are tied up. Instead, it offers a sense of closure while still acknowledging the lingering complexities of the characters' lives and the world they inhabit.
So it's not about clear-cut victories or defeats.
Not at all. Fuller avoids simplistic resolutions, mirroring the moral ambiguity that pervades the entire film. Think about the final confrontation between Skip and the communist agents. It's brutal, chaotic, and ultimately leaves us questioning who truly wins and who loses in this battle of ideologies.
It sounds like Fuller's challenging the traditional idea of a heroic climax where good triumphs over evil.
He's subverting those expectations and forcing us to confront the messy reality of a world where the lines between right and wrong are blurred, and even acts of heroism can have unintended consequences.
It's a reminder that even in victory, there's often a sense of loss, a recognition of the sacrifices made, and the scars left behind.
Precisely, and visually, Fuller reinforces this ambiguity through his use of shadows and framing. The final scene with Skip and Candy walking away together is bathed in darkness. Their faces are partially obscured. It's a visually striking image that suggests both hope and uncertainty, leaving their future and the future of the world they inhabit open to interpretation.
That sense of uncertainty is powerful.
It is.
It forces us to confront the lingering questions raised by the film, even after the credits roll.
Exactly. And those questions about individual freedom, moral compromise, and the personal cost of ideological conflicts resonate deeply with audiences, even today.
You mentioned earlier that Pickup on South Street has had a lasting impact on cinema. Can you elaborate on that? How do you see its influence in later films or genres?
Fuller's influence is evident in the neo-noir movement of the 1970s, with films like Taxi Driver and Chinatown echoing his gritty realism and moral complexity. He paved the way for a new breed of crime films that explored the darker aspects of urban life and challenged those traditional notions of heroism. His unflinching portrayal of violence and his willingness to delve into the psychological depths of his characters were groundbreaking for the time, paving the way for a more realistic and unsettling depiction of crime and its consequences on screen.
So he wasn't afraid to push boundaries and challenge those conventions of the genre.
Not at all. Fuller was a true maverick, A visionary filmmaker who wasn't afraid to tackle controversial themes and present a less sanitized view of the world. And his influence extends beyond the crime genre, his bold visual style. His masterful use of close-ups and camera angles to create tension and intimacy have inspired generations of filmmakers across various genres.
It's fascinating to see how a film from 1953 can still feel so fresh and relevant today. It speaks to that enduring power of Fuller's vision and his ability to tap into these universal themes that transcend time and place.
That's the mark of a true masterpiece. It's a film that continues to provoke and challenge audiences, forcing us to confront those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we inhabit. And it does so with style intelligence and a deep understanding of the human condition.
If someone were to watch Pickup on South Street for the first time today, what do you think would resonate with them most?
I think they'd be struck by its timelessness.
Okay.
The anxieties of the Cold War era might seem distant, but the questions the film raises about individual freedom, government overreach, and the struggle for survival in a world of shifting moral boundaries are more relevant than ever. They'd also be captivated by Fuller's masterful storytelling, his ability to weave a complex and suspenseful narrative, while simultaneously exploring those profound themes about human nature and the choices we make when we're pushed to our limits.
It sounds like Pickup on South Street is a film that demands to be seen, discussed, and revisited, offering something new to discover with each viewing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a film that stays with you long after the credits roll, prompting you to think critically about the world around you and your place within it.
Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up our deep dive?
Yes, I would encourage everyone to seek out Pickup on South Street and experience its power firsthand. Watch it with an open mind. Pay attention to its visual details and allow yourself to be drawn into its world of shadows and secrets. And most importantly, engage with its complexities, its moral ambiguities, and its timeless themes. It's a film that will reward your attention and leave you with much to ponder.
Well said, and on that note, we'll conclude our deep dive into Pickup on South Street. We hope this exploration has inspired you to seek out this cinematic gem and discover its enduring brilliance for yourself. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of film and culture.